Kaylee's going to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I am Kaylee, and I'm a current junior biology major. I do research in the College of Medicine and biochemistry. And so I'm just going to start out by kind of introducing the goals of this workshop. Obviously, we're talking about abstracts today. And then I'm going to go over some general things, and then Emily and Sophia are going to help you get into the details of what's most important in writing an abstract. So we're going to start out with, what is an abstract? What do I need to be able to write one? And then what are going to be the important things to include when I'm writing an abstract? So first, generally, an abstract is going to be a short piece of writing. You're not writing pages, usually just a paragraph, which you'll see, and we'll talk about later on, different requirements could happen like 300, 250 words, depending on what kind of abstract that you're writing and what you're writing it for. It's going to be an overall summary of your work, and we'll talk more about what that means later. I think something very important you're going to want to convey in your abstract is why it's important and significant to who you're writing it to, whether it's for a proposal for a fellowship or for a poster, anything like that. You're really going to want to show them why your research is important. And then in the short amount of writing that you have, you're going to want to be able to give the main ideas of your research and the most important parts to where you can show the importance of your research, show the overall result of your research while keeping it very succinct without any images or graphics. That will be, if you write a research proposal, you might have images later in that, but in your abstract, that is going to be words only. And feel free to ask questions at any time and to stop me. Okay. So 4 essential elements for an abstract. You're going to want accuracy, concision, clarity, and keywords. So I think even to sum up these 4 words, the main point of your abstract is that you want to get your point across well, your research across well, in the shortest amount of words that you can, while not oversimplifying your research. And this can be very difficult, which is why we're trying to give you this workshop today. So this kind of brings me to, well, if I have to keep my abstract so succinct, so short, what do I actually need to have in it? And that's going to include a title, your problem and purpose, so what you're researching and why. That comes back into the significance of your abstract. The methods, so what you did. And I would say to keep this pretty brief without a lot of technical jargon, especially considering, am I writing an abstract for a poster session with experts in my field, or am I writing an abstract for posters at the Capitol where there might not be very many people familiar with my research? And then you're going to want to include results. So maybe you might not even have results yet, but if you do, you'll want to shortly include those and like the main findings of your research. And then this conclusion and future directions is especially helpful if you're not done with the research. You're going to want to say, I've made it this far and these are my next steps, or I've found these results and this is the next project that we're going to do. And you're going to keep all of that in so many words, which we'll talk about in more detail later. I won't go into too much detail now. So your abstract title is going to be really important because it's going to catch attention. It really is like, your abstract is very short and in so many words, but your title is just going to need to convey the overall arching idea of your abstract. So you're going to want to make it clear about what you're trying to talk about in your research, and something that's going to catch somebody's attention. Because if they think your title is boring, they're probably not even going to read your abstract, and then they might not even read your proposal or look at your poster. And you want your title to be accurate to what you're actually doing research on. So have the most important details without being too many words, because with the title, you don't want multiple sentences. That'll just be too much. You'll want to have key elements describing your content. and then targets presentation of the right scientific session. I mentioned this a second ago. You're going to want to think about your abstract and who you're presenting to, and definitely have abstracts dependent upon your audience. So again, be succinct, specific, and use active voice, which I'm not going to talk about, but that leads me to our next ambassador who's going to talk to you about active versus passive voice.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm from the College of Arts and Sciences. I do research primarily in sociology, and my mentor is Dr. Rosie Musnick. And we just got the news that we have a book contract to publish this year, so super excited. So I'll start going into active and passive voice changes for you. And if you've ever been in a resume workshop, they may have kind of guided you on some of this before. So an active voice verb, scientists have conducted experiments to test the hypothesis, versus a passive being kind of used backwards. If you look and see phrases like have been conducted, and you see people action being kind of lacking in a sentence, that's passive. If you see actively, I have done X, that's a good way to think about it and remember it. What is it saying is happening? If you're doing something, active, but if something is being done to something else, it's passive. And active sentences have a lot of wow to them. So here are some descriptive title examples. I can tell you that the first one and the last one sound a lot like some of the ones that I've done before, with a good use of a colon. So giving a little bit of like a precursor or a title at the very beginning sometimes is really helpful, such as deconstructing the imperial gaze or perceptions of social support use. And then explaining further what you're doing. A qualitative study of single men experiencing chronic homelessness. Same way for our STEM example in the middle. I've had several look just like these. And then you want to contain your problem and your purpose. And this is super important. 1 to 2 sentences about why your research is important. So for me, the research that I just presented on right now, one of the projects that I'm doing is on gendered household norms in Appalachia, with the summary being that because there is such a binary understood role for people to play in society, when they don't have that job anymore, they feel lost because they don't want to do something that isn't affirming gender-wise to them. And I say as my 1 to 2 sentences roughly about why my research is important, because a post-coal economy in Appalachia is our reality. We are on the brink of financial and otherwise collapse, and hopefully bringing attention to the issues that people are facing socioeconomically, and simultaneously pointing out that it's because of gender perception in many ways, we can turn the tide. We can start to help people. So I open very boldly with that, thinking that there's a real public policy moment to be had here. And this is my reason for why what I do, because I love the place that I'm from and I want to be able to help us. And my research goal is just that, finding the reasons why jobs and tasks are such an opinionated thing for people to take on, and how do we get them to the place where they feel comfortable being otherwise. And you can find that thing for you, and once you can confidently state that, that's going to really sell it to other people. They're going to be excited to hear what you have to say. And then you want to contain some information on methods and materials, and definitely not being super short or curt or too succinct with this, but covering what you need to as well. So you want to answer, how was the study conducted? Following with a sentence that briefly describes your experimental approach. So for me, mentioning that I have surveys that I use for people alongside oral history documentation, alongside secondary demographic data that I find from other sources like census, alongside, lastly, photography and mixed media sources. And so I can describe that in a sentence or two, but also thoroughly enough that they know what you're doing and it looks legitimate. And yes, pertinent info without concerning too much of detail about that. So they've given good examples for you there. And I think the photo also explains what somebody's doing. Don't want to take up too much of their time because you do just have a paragraph. Now I'll pass it off to Sophia to talk a little bit more.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm an information communication technology major, and I will be talking to you about the results of what we've just talked about. So the results are of your findings. You just need to include the most important ones. There might be a lot of findings that you think are relevant, but they might not serve your main purpose in your summary. You need to choose the ones that will be the most important and the most prominent of your findings. And keep it down to just a sentence or two. We don't want people to be too overwhelmed about what they're reading. And if it's too much, then people are more than likely not going to end up reading it. And the amount of detail you provide will vary with your discipline. So you need to consult with your mentor and make sure that you are including the details that they have agreed upon, since this is their study. And in conclusion, you need to connect your results back to your purpose. So you need to make sure that your beginning and your end will have a well-rounded purpose, and that your person that is reading your research will be able to understand what you are trying to communicate to them. And be sure to reiterate the importance of the problem, so that way they will be able to leave knowing exactly what your research is about. So let's look at a few examples. Now, this is our first example. You can see that the title itself at the top is very quick, very easy, and there's a good use of acronyms. And then in the actual text itself, you can see good active words such as develop a process, utilize green chemistry, and approve upon the implementation. Just active words that let you know that there are actions being taken in order to achieve this. As well as it being very short and very clean. Then the second one.
We couldn't find the other one, but I'll just show you this one instead.
Okay, well, so this one is also fairly short and very manageable to read. It is a bit clumped together and might seem a little bit overwhelming on different formats. You also have to think about how your audience is going to be looking at this. Are they going to be reading it on their laptop or on their phone? Whenever you look at a phone format, you also have to realize that this is going to look very condensed and very long. And it may be something that people aren't going to be reading. Also, the title itself is also extremely long and filled with words that people may not know unless they are specifically a part of that field. So always keep in mind that your audience may not be experts in the field that you are in.
I do want to add something real quick, Sophia. For this one, if you all will notice the very first sentence, that bold sentence of stating a statistic, that's a really great introductory sentence for your abstract. It immediately draws you in as to like, oh, okay, what else does this study include? Or what else can this study tell me? And then if you look at the last two sentences, they both redirect, like what Sophia talked about, back to that opening.
Okay, and now we're going to look at a worksheet that will be able to help you break down what we just talked about. So the purpose and the problem, being able to list out the problem that you're trying to face and the purpose of it, as well as looking at the methods. So the details about your methodology and how it relates to your purpose. And lastly, the results. What are the results? Your three most important findings, and concluding to connect right back to your purpose. So that way you have a very well-rounded paper, or sorry, abstract.
And I also just added this, we actually have the workshop handout for you that includes the information of what to include, what to exclude, but also includes this worksheet for you all to help you as you all are crafting your abstracts.
All right, and some points to remember. We finally reached the end. Good job, people. Always stick to the word limit. Showcase abstracts word limit is 300 words. Create your first draft and be sure to revise. You have to look over it and make sure that it sounds good and that everybody's going to be able to get that point. And then keep your general tone throughout the abstract. You don't want to have a variation of like personal and formal and personal. It throws off the entire abstract. And always get feedback, especially from your mentors. Now we'll hand it off to any questions that you guys may have. I really enjoyed talking with you guys.